Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I will be sharing with you the incredible life story and chess career of Grandmaster Viktor Korchnoi. Korchnoi is described by many as the greatest chess player to never become the world champion. And the way this video will work is I will tell you some unbelievable statistics about his career, and I will show you 4 different chess games that he played, and the time that is separating those chess games is nearly 50 years. Korchnoi was ranked in the top 100 players in the world at the age of 75, an age at which grandmasters are usually not playing much chess anymore, if even they live that long. Korchnoi was incredible. Now, I used to make a lot more historical deep dives back in the day, so if you enjoy these videos, let me know in the comments and feel free to drop any other stories that you would like me to cover. On that note, I would like to read you a few statistics before we get into game number 1. Viktor Korchnoi won the USSR championship 4 times. He was a 6-time Olympic champion. He defeated 9 undisputed champions of the world, and this is perhaps the most unbelievable statistic. Between World War II until 2016, the year that Korchnoi passed away, he was the only person to win or draw a game against every single world champion. He had a win or a draw against every world chess champion from World War II until 2016. Unbelievable. On that note, let's go to 1962. Korchnoi's playing style was that of a counterpuncher. He was very good at being defensively resourceful, striking back at the proper moment, and he had long stamina. He could go deep into the endgame. And Mikhail Tal, who I have made multiple videos about, was the opposite. I mean, he was a star that burned bright. This is the USSR championship in 1962. Tal loved to get into brawls of games, right? But because of that, Korchnoi's record against him was 13 wins and 4 losses. Just a crazy record. Knight to f6, c4, c5. Tal played the Benoni, d5, e6. Back in the day, this was not known as an opening where Black had certain problems. Nowadays, in 2025, when this is being recorded, and whenever you're watching this in the future, hopefully YouTube still exists, it's an opening where Black has certain positional issues. But back in the day, you got to this type of a position, this is exactly where Tal wanted you. Mikhail Tal would invite his opponents into a deep dark forest where 2 + 2 is equal to 5, and there was only a way out for 1. The problem when he played Korchnoi was that Korchnoi was the one getting out of the forest more often than him. Knight to a6, and then knight to c7. In the Benoni, Black relies on the open e-file. Black relies on the diagonal. Black relies on pressure on d5, and various queenside counterplay. As you can see here from Korchnoi, he's playing very principled chess. He puts the pawns in the center. Solidity over here controls any infiltration. It's kind of always Tal who is looking for various pawn breaks, strikes at the center from the sides, right? Korchnoi's just waiting. Knight to e8, bishop to g5, attacking the queen, maybe potentially looking for a battery to trade off the powerful bishop standing in front of Tal's king. Korchnoi is just putting on the pressure. Bishop to f6. The bishop drops back. Look at this. a4. He's not letting Tal get anything on the queen side, anything in the center. I literally have a video on this channel called The Man Who Invented Brilliant Moves. That's what they say about Tal. And in this game, he was able to generate something. But the second he threw a punch, Korchnoi struck back so beautifully, straight down the middle, a move that is covered by 4 different pieces. Black literally could not lay claim to a square more than that one. But after you take, I get my knight to the square where my pawn used to be. That is what we call a clearance sacrifice. A square you open up by sacrificing, usually a pawn. And now there are threats like pawn to d6, which is a fork, which means Tal has to go on the back foot. Now we grab the bishop. We are not interested in doing anything too flashy. We just wanted to impose on the dark squares, win our pawn back, and now we have a dominant position after this trade. So the center clears out 25 moves. These 2 pawns are a nightmare to deal with for Black because they're just threatening to move forward constantly. These pawns are under fire. Tal doesn't have any sort of coordinated attack going. All he needed to do was throw 1 punch. Boom. Korchnoi went straight back at him. This is prime Korchnoi, although Korchnoi played chess until he was, well into his 70s, prime Korchnoi, 30 years old. I mean, this is when like everything is functioning beautifully. Bishop to b7, the queen goes back along the dark squares, just a nice and solid defensive move. And you got the feeling Korchnoi loved to play chess. One of the major criticisms about Korchnoi was that, Spassky said this actually, Boris Spassky, a legend in his own right, he said Korchnoi won games in 140 moves when he could have won them in 40 moves, because he just played. He had a technique where maybe the grandmasters at the time didn't call him the most principled or the most technically sound, but he just played, and he found different, like for example in this position, maybe instead of playing bishop takes knight, he could have played something like this and look for tactics or look for an attack. But watch, this allowed more opportunities for him. Queen g5, now he's going for queen f6 and queen g7 mate. Tal creating counterplay. Tal was always a man ready for counterplay. Now watch this, queen f6 infiltration here. And what I love most about this game is the technique demonstrated. Rook d1, rook d4. Look at this beautiful move. Rook is sacrificed because of checkmate. Queen has to go back. g4, just getting everything into the game. It looks like Tal has a blockade. He's got everything covered. I mean, Korchnoi walks his king into the position. You just get the sense this man just loves to play. He just loves a long game. Pawn takes, black is slowly running out of moves. Another rook sacrifice, a ghost rook, a rook that cannot be captured. Rook gets into c7. Tal goes for a little bit of desperate counterplay on that side of the board. Now we sack the rook, and we are in time. Because even though Tal can check us, the king is always hiding over here. Queen to e5 is a beautiful move, taking away any checks. Tal gets close to promotion, but it's simply not enough. King to f7, pawn to d7, and here Tal resigned. You talk about a beautiful game. Tal played games like this with the white pieces against people throughout his career. Korchnoi put out the flame that is Mikhail Tal. 2 pawns on the 7th rank. This is a checkmate incoming. Even though the man is about to make another queen, you can even promote to a knight if you have terrible manners. But of course, e8 with a promotion. Actually, promoting to a knight could get you into some trouble. Just make the queen and shut up. A gorgeous game from 1962. Now, we go forward to the year 1978. Now, this matchup, this rivalry with Karpov, deserves its own Netflix show. If anybody is watching this and knows somebody that works in television, in limited series, 1978, Baguio City in the Philippines, the most controversial and strange World Chess Championship of all time. Couple of quick bullet points, all right? Karpov was the beloved pupil of the Soviet chess regime. He was supposed to be the star. In 1976, Korchnoi defected from the Soviet Union, becoming the first and I believe only grandmaster, at least that high profile, to do it. Up until that point, and maybe beyond that point, leaving family behind. A risk that very few people were ever going to take. And then he represented Switzerland for the remainder of his career. He qualified to play against Karpov in the 1978 World Chess Championship match, marred by all sorts of ridiculous controversy, like there being a hypnotist in the front row, like there being a bilberry yogurt delivered to Karpov. That was a message. Wearing sunglasses so you're not being hypnotized and to mess with the opponent. They need to make a series about it. But one of the most beautiful games came here when Korchnoi played g3 on the first move. If you are not a long-time chess player, you might not even understand. This is a ridiculous first move. You are completely not occupying the center. Pawn to g3 would be never seen at top-level chess. I mean, it's like underhanded serve in tennis in a final. I mean, it's just bombastic. And then after that, he went e4, d3, f4. Korchnoi trailed in this match by many games. I believe 3 at some point, if not 4, but I do believe it was 3 before he tied it up going into the final game. It was the first to win 6. Back in the day, they just played. There was no limit. It was the first to 6 wins. They could go on and on and on. 1978 Karpov. Karpov was even granted the title because Bobby Fischer would not defend it. So there was a lot of speculation, a lot of questions. It was a bitter, bitter rivalry. And yet, fun fact, Korchnoi and Karpov were actually colleagues and decent friends, and they held secret training matches against one another. You will never see a position like this in a world championship again. It will not happen. And in that game, it was Korchnoi putting the pressure on Karpov, all right, making him uncomfortable. Karpov fighting back, though, creating a position where white has a bunch of pawns on the dark squares, and Karpovian defense was also not to be understated. He went for counterplay. He put a lot of pawns on the light squares, but Korchnoi was not to be denied. It was his time. Knight back to b7. A queenside battle erupting. Now, b3 was a bit too much. Probably Karpov had to play a move like bishop here and just wait. He had to wait for Korchnoi to come to him, but he tried to call the shots, and the second that you would throw a punch, Korchnoi was so quick. Pawn takes b3, rook takes b3, queen c1, and the infiltration concluded. He won the rook. It couldn't move because there was too much pressure on black. If knight takes a6, you would have lost that rook. Also, this was hanging in many positions. And he broke through. Korchnoi had Karpov concerned. He had him worried in this match, especially as he roared to a comeback, but he was just unable to put it away in the end. And the crazy thing about this is, by the way, Karpov resigned on his move. So Karpov made his move, and before white could even respond, he resigned the game because he was like, it's hopeless. He's just going to block my check. And this is totally winning because white has a rook for a bishop. And this late into the game, a rook for a bishop is decisive. A rook cannot beat a bishop on its own. It's actually impossible, but with all these pawns, you would take one of them, then you would promote, you would make a queen or another rook, and then you would go on to win. So it's 1978. They got to make a show about this. If they're going to make a show about literally anything nowadays, they make shows about criminals like 3 months after they come out. I don't know how they have all this stuff ready to go, but they make shows about anything. 1978, this would be, I feel like if done correctly, it could be a modern day Queen's Gambit. I mean, it would be such a hit. Crazy rivalry. They had rematches in 1981, and he would re-qualify to play against Karpov constantly while also winning tournaments. A rivalry that, if Karpov didn't exist, Korchnoi would become the world champ. I mean, he would have won against literally anybody else. Really. Now, I take you forward to 1983. 1983. This is a wild story. In 1982, 1983, Garry Kasparov was emerging as a prodigy. Kasparov, the world champion, arguably the GOAT. Kasparov played Karpov in 1984 in their first ever world championship. To get there, Kasparov had to play Korchnoi in the candidates, which are a series of matches that lead up to the world championship. They were supposed to play in California. Kasparov was disallowed to travel to California to play Korchnoi because there was going to be a Soviet boycott of the Olympics and because of the Cold War political situation. So Korchnoi won by default. He didn't have to play the match. He could have re-qualified to play Karpov again, but he said no. I want to play Kasparov. This young man, I want to play this young prodigy. He actually met in London to play Kasparov on short notice, to actually play the match, to not win on a default. And this was the first game between the two. Kasparov was young, 20, 21, 22, when this took place. Versus Korchnoi, think about this. This was played, Korchnoi was already in his mid-50s. I know that sounds, okay, who cares? It's chess. Grandmasters don't play into their 50s. There are very few exceptions like Vishwanath and Anand who compete at this level into their 50s. Now, Korchnoi in this game, let's look at it from black's perspective. We had a couple of games from white's perspective. This was a Queen's Indian defense, an opening that used to be extremely popular. D5, even now is not so unpopular. Bishop b5 check played by the young Kasparov. This is Kasparov before he's the Michael Jordan of chess, before he's a, multiple-time world champion. C5, bishop g5, and then, before that whole rivalry was born. And in this game, it was Korchnoi who played a gambit. He went down a pawn. In fact, what's funny is this variation, knight c3, knight f3, and knight c3, this is called the Kasparov variation. How insane is that? I am inputting a game into chess.com, and the second that you play this against the Queen's Indian, it's called the Kasparov variation. It wasn't called the Kasparov variation back in the day. We might be looking at one of the games where the opening name was literally born. Amazing. So you get it playing into a line that ultimately becomes named after the player, and yet he's going to go on to lose this game. Spoiler alert, because Korchnoi is going to win every game in this video. And Bishop e5, bishop back to g7. This is the position. Again, Korchnoi loved long games. We've got an endgame brewing here. We have 5 pawns per player, a 1-on-2 situation over here, a 4-on-3 on this side. We're about to compete. We're about to, try to put our bishops and our knights on the best possible squares in the long run. Queen d4. Black plays king g8. He's not going to play f6, weakening his position. Plays king g8, says, Kasparov, come and get me. Kasparov, knight g5. h6, kicking the knight out and welcoming it into the f6 square, but instead he gets rid of it and plays the knight to a6, says, Gary, I'm going to activate my knight. Are you going to take it? Kasparov says no. Queen c5, hitting both, so you can't take the pawn. And we have this. How is Korchnoi going to go on to beat one of the greatest players of all time from this position, being 30 years older than him? The stamina doesn't really play into the hands here. Centralizes his rook, improves the position of the rook, brings the king to the center, and blockades the pawn. All right? Now, you know who also won a lot of games like this from positions like this? Karpov. Anatoly Karpov, the man who Korchnoi had a bitter rivalry with. f5. Okay? I mean, I still don't see how are we going to... Okay, now I'm beginning to see it. We're targeting the pawn over here. Now we trade. So Kasparov doesn't like what's coming. He doesn't like knight to e4 arriving. He doesn't like that his king is going to be slowly suffocated with severe pressure, and the king is going to, keep making improvements. So he trades the rooks. But now knight takes a4. If you take with the rook, I win the bishop. If you take with the bishop, I play b5. And this is the big problem. Probably Gary thought he could save this position. He probably thought, we both have weaknesses, but ultimately I will be able to hold the endgame. And Korchnoi is like, young man, you don't know what you're going to get yourself into. Yes, you can win my pawn. Go take the pawn. I have b5. I fully invest in my outermost pawn. Outside pass pawns in rook endgames, or any endgame really, are the most valuable. b4. And I'm going to be putting my rook behind the pawn. Kasparov ran to e3, b3. The king's going to stop the pawn, but not before you lose your center pawn, and not before the pawn is used as a decoy. You have to go take the pawn. You cannot take the rook, and now I infiltrate. And here's the problem. Your king abandoned these pawns. They're going to perish. f4 removes the defenses of the pawns. Rook h5, and now the killer move. Rook e3. And the reason why this is winning, it's only a 1-pawn advantage, but the pawns are together. And when the pawns go together, the entire force goes together. This pawn will be easily stopped. Rook behind the pawn. These pawns will not be easily stopped. And Korchnoi went to work. Pawn to f3, and young Gary Kasparov resigned the first match that Korchnoi did not even have to play. But as we know, youth prevailed. Kasparov struck back later in the match, and he went on to win it. He went on to play in the 1984 World Chess Championship, also one that is worthy of its own, series probably. He was down in that match. He tied that match. It was 2 months long. That's not the subject of this video, but it's incredible because it all started by winning this match against Korchnoi, a match that didn't even have to happen. He lost the match by default because he wasn't allowed to travel due to the Cold War and the political situation. Korchnoi said, no, I don't want to win like that. Let's play. And he went on to lose. Now, again, from 1983 until the next game I'm going to show you, Korchnoi played all the time. I think he played in the candidates 10 or 11 times. Slowly, his results started to fade. He wasn't always a contender, but he was a top player. He played into his 60s, 70s. Now we go to 2011. We are in Gibraltar. Viktor Korchnoi is playing the black pieces. You might recognize the person playing with the white pieces. That's Fabiano Caruana. Now, at this point, Fabi's like 18. he's a teenager, I think. I think he's not even 20 years old yet. I think he's born in 1993, so that would make him 18 years old. He's playing Viktor Korchnoi, 25-44 FIDE. Not that impressive. Oh, yeah? Not that impressive? This is impressive. Now, we're going to get into this game. Pawn to e4. Pawn to e5. Korchnoi with the black pieces in this game. Bishop b5. a6. Bishop a4. Normal Spanish, d6, solid, bishop e7, and like this. Now, this is a very rare line. To play pawn to d6, bishop e7, and then knight d7 is, you will never see this at the high level anymore. Ever. Ever. Bishop e3, he kicks out the bishop like this, and Korchnoi goes for a kingside counterattack. I mean, when you look at the actual opening database from this position, playing like this is... It just, you know, black doesn't do this anymore. Black plays moves like b5. But playing knight here, and then playing for this attack is amazing. And what's funny about this position, you know something incredible? 6 years after Korchnoi played this against Fabi, Fabi played this himself as black against Vishy Anand. We learn from the legends even in older age. 2011. Now, bishop b6, Fabiano damaging the pawn structure of the legend. Bishop d5, Victor Korchnoi, 80 years of age, plays g5. He wasn't 80 yet. I think he was 79. Gibraltar's in January. He's born in March. Now, again, to be 79 years old and contending against the best young players, it's just, it doesn't happen. It has to be mentioned. I'm not trying to call anybody a senior citizen, okay? But it doesn't happen. People don't play violent and amazing chess like this. Look at this. Look at this. This is quite literally the example of getting bodied on a basketball court by the old man who shoots threes and plays lockdown defense, okay? G5, G4. Pawn takes, knight h2, Fabiano going backwards. Korchnoi is only going forward. He is only going forward. Bishop is coming into g5. That bishop might go to f4 in the future. That bishop might take to clear the way for the queen into the attack. Fabiano is focusing on the queen side. He's not going to get anything on the queen side. Victor Korchnoi gets rid of him. Knight e3. The bishop gets rid of itself. It doesn't have a place in the attack. Yeah, computer wanted to play h5 and leave it there. It doesn't matter, all right? Rook takes e3, queen f6, queen e1. Korchnoi's bringing another piece. Here you start looking around, you start going, this bishop is great, but it attacks nothing. I mean, the king already sidestepped. The g-file could be used by black to attack in the future. Maybe even go bishop e6 or take the bishop. And then you have the second pawn coming. Fabi tries to go for a little bit of counterplay. Now Korchnoi gets rid of the bishop, as I just said, and uses the g-file. Now he's ready to bring the second bishop out and then bring the second rook. It's simply a game of can Fabiano Caruana hold on? Queen to g3. Queen to g3 is crazy. That is inviting the capture into the position, but probably Fabi thought, I can't lose on an open board. I mean, there's nothing left. There's no pawns. It's just queen, rooks, and bishops. I'm not going to lose on an open board. Or maybe you will. Because within a few moves, in the next 3 moves, rook g5, queen h6, rook g8, this reconfiguration of the position gives Korchnoi unstoppable pressure into white. White now has to run the king. That's the only way to defend. You got to go king here, pawn here, knight f1. Try to set up a little sand castle that might get bowled over by a wave. But I'm not really sure what else Fabiano could have done. There's some moments the computer wants to strike in the center, right? But we're only human, and you get here, you play rook back to e1. Look at the last few moves for white. Queen f3, rook f1, king h1, rook f2, rook e1. I mean, it just looks like you're stuck. Queen g6, targeting the pawn on d3, which, by the way, you can still take, because of this, there's e4, which is a fork. King runs now, but it's too late. The bishop gets screwed into the d3 square, another pawn collapses, and Korchnoi's like, hey, I might be 79. I could beat this dude up 2 pawns. I just beat him in an equal position. Rook g7. Now we get rid of the counterplay. Queen f6, rook f8. This is going to be checkmate in a few moves. Fabiano tries to at least defend his rook. Korchnoi is just still attacking on all sides of the board. Queen back to g7. And like I said, he just loves to play. He just loves to play. We'll keep the game going as long as you want. Oh, you got some counterplay. That looks nice. Bishop f1. Oh, queen to e5. And if you go king to g4, there are multiple ways to win, but none more ruthless than d4. The same 2 pawns that he used to take down Mikhail Tal in their game, the 2 center pawns, which ultimately walk down the board together. Bishop e2 is coming. If you try to defend only against bishop e2, you just get mated brutally. This was a historic game. I don't know the last time somebody at Korchnoi's age when this game was played defeated somebody above 2,700. And this is not even the end of the story. I think the age difference here was quite literally 60 years. I don't know when the last time that has ever happened that this could have been pulled off. But multiple matches after this, Korchnoi played exhibition style against, for example, he played Wolfgang Ullmann, and the combined age of the two players was 162. Afterward, he played another match that combined ages of the players, 174. 2 years after that game against Fabiano Caruana, he suffered a stroke. 2013. In 2014, he came back to competitive chess. He played more chess. The man could not be stopped. But in 2016, he passed away in Switzerland. There are variations in multiple openings named after Viktor Korchnoi. And if you interviewed 100 players, the majority of them, if not 70 to 80%, would say that Viktor Korchnoi is the greatest chess player who never became a world champion. He ran into Karpov during his peak years, and afterward, he would run into Kasparov. I mean, and then even into the 90s, you know, that was when the next generation came up and played. He won or drew against every undisputed or disputed world champion from the Second World War until 2016. He's defeated Magnus Carlsen, who was not featured even in this video. Or probably drawn Magnus Carlsen, right? But he had, you know, he got an opportunity to play everybody. Anand, Kramnik, Kasparov, Karpov, the entire Soviet gauntlet of grandmasters. He had great records against Bobby Fischer. I can go on and on and on. I hope you enjoyed this historical deep dive. If there's any more that have ever fascinated you that you would like me to cover, let me know in the comments. And if you have a friend that hasn't given chess a shot, maybe send them this video. Maybe they'll be fascinated. There are so many amazing stories from the 20th century about so many different legends, and I will hopefully get into all of them by the time that I am done making videos. That's all I have for you today. If you'd like to check out some educational content, check out Chessly, my platform. It's always in the top line of the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.